Yo, this is a fantastic question. This user says, thinking about it, I'm curious how C would handle a null byte mid-string. So we're talking about the C programming language here. I know a lot of people, when they hear this, they think, Dave, C doesn't have strings. We have character arrays. Well, technically, according to the spec, we do have strings. Strings are conceptual. They're defined as an array of characters that has a terminating null byte. That is how we have strings. So your question here is, how would we handle if we had a null byte mid-string? C would just consider that the end of the string. So if you had foo, null byte, bar, null byte, any function you use that expected a string would fail. No, it wouldn't fail. It would stop after it processed foo. It wouldn't move on to bar. This is these are functions that expect strings, so they expect character data that has the terminating null byte. This has been around for a while. You can go pull up like the C89 spec, and they talk about strings there. So if you had a null byte in the middle of the string, you would have excess data there, but those functions that expected strings would never get to them because they would terminate the null byte. However, if you also kept track of the length of this, for instance, then you could totally read right past that because you're in C. You can read right past anything. In this case, you would get valid memory, but if you read past, the second null byte, hey man, you're on your own. Maybe your process crashes. Hopefully your process crashes. That's probably the best thing that can happen there when you start reading into unknown data. So yeah, you can have a null byte in your string, and now from the perspective of all the functions in C that handle strings, your string is just a little bit smaller. Only you, the programmer, knows that it's supposed to be a little bit longer. So this brings us to the greater concept when you're dealing with like data types in C. Typically, you will see one of two types. I mean, obviously there's more, but like you will see one of two approaches. Either you have fixed length or you have a length that you are aware of, and then you would have no terminating null byte. So like I would just have character data, and I would also have the length of that character data. So I, the programmer, the program knows how far to read. Or you would have some sort of marker that signified that you were at the end. So if you're reading a file, you might have like some sort of EOF marker. If you're reading a string, you might have a null byte. If you were reading a list of pointers, you might have a null pointer. So either you're going to have a length that tells you when you're done, or you're going to have a marker that tells you when you're done. Sometimes you can have both, and it's a little bit redundant. If you have neither, you're in a really bad situation because you don't know if you're looking into good data or bad data. Higher level languages than like C or different high level languages other than C will have protections like this. But with C, you got to know the length or you got to know when to stop reading. Otherwise, you're into bad territory. But yeah, that's kind of how that works.